Hello there. You've been transported into space this week, and this is the... I'm the ManNerd.
And I'm Skystar. How you doing?
I think they're doing great now that we're, talking to them about movies.
Yeah. It's always good to talk about movies.
Definitely. So this week, well, you did last week. So this week, we are doing Star Trek, the 2009 version. Not the original series, not the original first movie. We are doing 2009 with Christopher Pine, Zachary Quinto, and who else? Who else? My favorite character in that? Only he's there for like 10 minutes.
You mean the one?
Chris Hemsworth. That's it.
Wait, Hemsworth is in it?
Chris Hemsworth is Kirk's dad in the beginning, man.
I missed that. Oh gosh.
Oh, I love that.
I missed that.
Oh yeah, Mr. Chris Hemsworth. I love me some Thor, man. All right, so let's do this, man. Go for it.
Yeah, so we're gonna kick it off with a little spoiler-free synopsis for you.
All right, I'll do half, you do half. We'll split it up this time. All right, 2009 Star Trek. In my opinion, it was a fun movie. If you're a fan of Star Trek, it's one of those things where it's really not going to meet your expectations. But if you're a fan of fun space movies, you're going to love it. Of course, has the original characters, but in a twist for a reason, because this is not supposed to be the original, canon. This is supposed to be kind of something new. It was a little bit cheesy in the way that they presented all the characters, but that's what everybody wanted. They wanted to see the characters.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm ending. You can continue.
Yeah. No, it's a good movie. And on what you said, one thing you should know, this movie, the director, the people that wrote it, they straight up said this is never meant to be like a reboot of Star Trek or anything like that. This is their own thing. They took Star Trek and they did their own thing with it. And it's so much better because they did that. They didn't try to recreate Star Trek.
Yeah, I do agree with you on that. If they tried to just reboot it, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, at all. Don't get me wrong. It's not the greatest film in the universe, but the fact that they didn't try to recreate Star Trek did them a lot of good. It's a fun sci-fi romp through space with all the classic Star Trek names and faces that you know and love. Just a unique story though. Like, again, they did their own thing. You've got James Kirk, you've got Bones, you've got Spock. You actually have two Spocks, which is like one of the greatest things ever.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
You got Captain Pike.
Yep, Captain.
You've got Sulu.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Oh, and of course, one of my favorite characters as well, Scotty, played by Simon Pegg.
Yeah. So jumping right in, how did you feel about like that opener to the movie? Because like that's always a big thing with Star Trek. Every Star Trek has their opener.
The first time I watched it, I was really pulled in right off the bat because you see this starship. Of course, it's not the Enterprise yet, and then it's kind of you get into the bridge, and it's kind of darker than normal, not as bright as all the other Star Trek. So it kind of gives you that kind of darkish feeling, like, oh, this is getting to something. And then they're checking out this anomaly, and then it just gets crazy as this ship comes out of this portal, this anomaly, and then starts firing on them, and they're just so outmatched. And then they just, it's crazy. Oh, that drew me in.
The anomaly's a black hole because they're playing real fast and loose with the science in this one.
Oh yeah, they are. Yep. Yeah, and you don't know what's going on. And then you kind of get the notion of the time travel aspect when the captain of the big ship, Captain Nero, he talks to the captain of the Federation starship that came on board, and they ask, what star date is it? And they're kind of like, oh, okay, what are they doing here? And they're asking about Spock. And I'm like, yeah. I don't know any Spock. Yeah, that's kind of weird. Kind of throws you off right off the bat.
Yeah, it lets them kind of hide the big reveal of the double Spock later in the movie. Leonard Nimoy just never disappoints on that.
Oh, yeah. I
really liked that they did such a good job with hiding some of those reveals. Like, sure, we may have already kind of guessed them, but like they didn't just, they at least made an attempt to hide their reveals. Some movies just kind of like, no, we're just not going to try.
Yeah, they did kind of force bringing Leonard Nimoy into the story, though. Like, not the fact about the time travel and everything. I'm talking about how he came into contact with Kirk later on. I really felt like that was just pushing it. The way that they did that.
They definitely could have drew that out a little more. I would have maybe liked to see him come in just a touch earlier than he did, and if like maybe a little more naturally. You're right, it did feel a bit forced.
Yeah, and even Kirk being on that planet, it was just like, why? And I kind of understand their mindset on that, but it was just like, what the heck? We should get to that later once we know the big part of why Kirk was there and why he was sent there by Spock and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go straight into Kirk, James T. Kirk, because he, of course, is the main character, and it shows him right off the bat as a kid, a troublemaker, and then shows him growing up after that, and then getting into Starfleet. They kind of fast-tracked that whole thing. What was your opinion of the scene with him stealing his stepdad's car, the antique car, and then driving it off a cliff?
Weirdly enough, I know people are going to disagree with me. I like that. So Kirk in the original Star Trek, and yes, I'm doing a comparison even though I shouldn't, was always kind of the wild card captain. He was always the guy who's like, I'm fine with the rules right up until they stop me from doing my job, which got him in trouble a lot. And seeing him be that wild child as even a little kid, like stealing his dad's car, kind of plays to that characterization of the person and the captain he's eventually going to become. And it's also really typical of that sort of characterization back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I think the way that they did that when he was driving the car, the kid was pretty good at that because he was like excited and then jumpy and scared and excited again and just going with it, kind of like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just doing it and just going with it, and it's escalating and escalating. And then he tries to try to shrug it off at the end, like, is there a problem, officer? And I think that whole aspect of it, I think that compares, like you said, like the captain he becomes.
Yeah.
Like he's not that carefree later on. And one thing that they did that they didn't have to do, but they did to compare how he used to be to who he was becoming to be a captain, was when they had that the 3-man crew jumping off the shuttle to go down and take out that drill.
Yeah.
And that one guy, I forget his name, but the third guy that was with him and Soto, he was just overboard. I think they were trying to act like, trying to show you the difference between Kirk and what he could have been, like go too far and then get yourself killed.
Right. But, at the same, since we're talking side by side comparisons, because you mentioned like Kirk is the main character, but really he's one of two main characters for this movie. The other,
that's correct.
The other being Spock, played by Zachary Quinto. And they did sort of a side by side, watching these characters grow up. Like you see Spock, you see Kirk, and you see like their early life. Then you kind of see, how they get into the academy, how they move to like gaining their own ship, and like eventually them coming to a head over Kirk's captain test for the Kobayashi Maru, which we'll get to in just a minute. Mm-hmm. But really, I want to focus on Spock here because like his growing up was almost exactly opposite of Kirk. Whereas Kirk was untamed and wild, Spock was like everything about his life was structured, all of it. His education, even where he was going to go after Vulcan, and his education on Vulcan was predetermined. And that's where you see him deviate from that structure as well.
Yeah, and that's all because he's half human, and of course, he's trying to balance emotion with logic, which is hard for him because he's not full-blood Vulcan. And thinking about that, like Spock's character, I think you're right. The side-by-side on them, they did develop differently. And I think, Kirk, he ended up developing more patience and less jump in, but still with that reckless abandonment that he's known for. And then Spock, he had to, come to terms with his emotions a lot sooner than the character normally would have, because he lost his planet.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big thing. They're just pushing them to become their true selves really quickly in this movie.
Yeah. And again, you're right. You see them rub off on each other because like even you see Spock gain at least for a Vulcan, a more cavalier attitude. Sure, he's still got that logic, but he becomes quickly fine with bending the rules to suit whatever the mission needs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, let's go back to that Kobayashi Maru because I like that test in Starfleet. That was cool.
That's a big,
especially Kirk's. Yeah.
That's a big moment for both James Kirk and Spock. It's a defining moment for both of those characters, and that's part of why I really like it. And I feel like the movie did that moment justice.
Describe it a little bit for everybody, just in case,
So in case you're not familiar with Star Trek lore, the Kobayashi Maru in Star Trek is supposed to be a simulated scenario for a captain of a starship, and it's supposed to be unwinnable. You're not supposed to be able to win it. And this is to help teach captains that sometimes, no matter what you do, you're just going to lose. And you need to be able to accept that and do your job anyway. That's what it's supposed to do. And it was designed, at least in this movie, by Spock. He created the Kobayashi Maru. He designed the entire scenario. And then in comes James Tiberius Kirk. And in the movie, he's already failed.
Ruins it all.
Yeah, he's already failed it once.
Yep.
He's already failed it once. And he's like, okay.
I think twice, actually. I think that was his third time.
You're right. It was his third time. And so he finds a way around the rules of the game. It's unclear whether like he straight up cheated, like it was a straight cheat, or if he just found a glitch or like a what's the word I'm looking for?
A loophole or something,
a loophole. Like they make it really foggy exactly what it is he did, but whatever it was, he essentially beat the unbeatable scenario, which did not go over well.
Yeah, and he was so cavalier about it, eating an apple the whole time.
Yeah, because that is the universal trope for this character's an asshole.
Yep. And that kind of shows you his whole mindset on the whole movie. Like, he's not going to give up. He's going to find a way no matter what. He doesn't care if it seems unwinnable. He's going to win it. And that's exactly what he did.
It also shows his biggest flaw because there's a right way to have done it, and he didn't do that. And that's what got him in so much trouble. He's too willing to break the rules. Sometimes, yes, it is necessary to bend or twist the rules to your advantage to win a scenario, but Kirk jumped straight to that solution. He didn't even consider other possibilities.
Yeah, and I think just, I'm not going to talk about the other movies, but jumping into like the general aspect of his character in all three of the movies that came, the two others after, he continued to do that. It's like he was Kirk, but he was a really, really young Kirk that was put in, command way too early. You definitely get that from this character from these three movies.
Yeah, which makes sense because he was supposed to train for command. Like, you see that.
Oh, yeah. And then take over for Pike after he died, which he ends up not dying in this movie.
But then
yeah, but we're getting off topic here.
moving forward with it, you then like have this big emergency on Vulcan that shows up, and now everyone has to go board the ships, which Kirk can't get on because he's currently being court-martialed. And enter a personal favorite, Bones. I love Bones. It's a character played by Carl Urban, who I'm also a big fan of, just because.
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
Carl, if you've ever seen The Boys or Thor Ragnarok, that's like you've seen Carl Urban. He's one of those actors that just kind of pops up everywhere. He does. Yeah. He's rarely the main character, but he always just he's just there. He was in Lord of the Rings.
Oh man. Who was he in Lord of the Rings?
I forget exactly what character off the top of my head.
Okay, I gotta look it up here. All right, we're doing this. Damn it, this might take a while. All right, keep talking. I'll find it.
And anyway, Bones gets Kirk onto the ship, and they go to Vulcan. That's where everything goes wrong in the movie. It's also where the movie itself, I feel like, starts to lose me a bit, because you lose a bit of the flow, because there's a lot of exposition and a lot of stuff that happens at once, and I don't feel like it was very well pieced together personally at that time.
I do agree with you with that. Yeah, it didn't feel like it flowed very well there.
Yeah, so that's where the movie really started to lose me a bit, because like it felt like the flow of the movie got interrupted in that moment.
Now, what was your like favorite scene visually in that movie?
Visually, that's a bit of a tough call, but I would have to say probably the reveal of the Enterprise. The first time you get that first shot of the Enterprise. Though admittedly, that's probably a lot to do with the fact that I'm a huge Star Trek nerd, and I love a good shot of the Enterprise, but they did the ship really well. Like, I love how they designed the ship and made it look. It's clear they put a lot of work into making the Enterprise look like a possibly real ship.
Yeah, the visuals in that movie were just fantastic.
Well, it's J.J. Abrams. He loves him some lens flares.
Too many lens flares. That I really had to get used to that because I hadn't watched it in a while. I haven't watched a J.J. Abrams in a while.
Yeah.
So putting that on, like, I was like, holy crap, why is it glaring? Oh, okay, got it. I forgot.
It's Éomer, by the way, the character I was trying to think of that Carl Urban plays in Lord of the Rings. Just tossing that in there.
Yeah, so apparently he is the leader of the Riders of Rohan. So there's that. Fighting against Mordor. Yeah, I'd never even connected that, but Carl Urban is the man. I like that guy, and he's such an ass in The Boys too. It's great. So moving on to the best scene visually, I gotta go with what everybody probably goes with when they come out of warp, right, at Vulcan, and all the ships are destroyed, and they got to, dodge every single one of them.
Yeah.
I think that was my scene, just because, like, when I first saw it, I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting the ships to already be blown up. I was expecting a fight.
Yeah, no.
To be happening. And then, bam, no, the fight's done.
There was no fight. And what's crazy, too, is, like, the ship they're fighting is a mining vessel. It is a mining vessel from, like, a century and a half ahead of where the movie takes place. It's part of that time travel thing.
So those must be really weak weapons if it's a mining vessel.
Right?
For their time. But for going in the past, they're super powerful.
Yeah, which it's also clear that obviously that by the time you get to that point, that mining vessel has been in in this timeline for like 25 years. They've clearly done some, like, thrown some extra guns or something on there. Otherwise, it's ridiculous that a mining vessel beats like half a fleet of military vessels.
Yeah, that is right. There was a lot of ships that came out there, but also they were super powerful right off the bat when they destroyed the ship with Kirk's father on it.
Yeah, and
of course it was only one ship.
That's predominantly because they figured out a way to weaponize the mining laser, which is insane, but kind of makes sense. That laser would have to be incredibly powerful to do what it does, which is like burn a hole through a planet.
Yes, but that's what they do, man. They're mining, so they could just burn through a planet.
Or a starship.
Totally. Oh, man. Yeah, why doesn't the Federation use a big old laser just to burn through the ship? Just cut it in twain,
That's actually a question they answer in the second movie, which we'll do at some later date, I'm sure. But yeah, no, it's a whole thing with Federation policy and how they're a military, but they're not really a military. They're a military.
They're keeping the peace, but by numbers.
Yeah, well, really the whole point of the Federation is to get like a bunch of species and a bunch of planets to work together, and humans kind of sit at the center of that, acting as the ones holding like the center bit together so that everyone else can be on board. That's the way it's presented.
Yeah, and you get more of that from the show Enterprise.
Yeah,
the first Enterprise. Yeah, not the original series, even before that. The first Enterprise that came from Earth. So you get that whole story on how the Federation actually became a federation. So that's kind of cool. But that's a whole new episode right there.
Yeah,
we can go into
that's a whole thing.
These shows so in depth.
Yeah, that might be if we decide to do a longer one of these and just talk about like a TV show, maybe then, because that's a deep dive.
That is so deep. Now let's talk about the weirdest moments in the movie.
Oh, the weirdest moments in the movie. For me, that's going to be some of the science they're playing real fast and loose with, and I mean like real loose, like red matter. What the frick is red matter? Is not a thing.
Yeah, and why do they have so much of it if they only use a speck of it? And wouldn't that destroy a whole galaxy if it like a little drop of it took out a star? And then they blew up the whole thing? Wouldn't that take out the entire galaxy?
It's not just that. You see him use a drop, a tiny like water droplet sized amount to take out a star that is currently going supernova. Like, it's not in the process, it is actually exploding. And you see this drop suck this star, which is already exploding, back down into a tiny black hole. The thing he drew that drop from is like massive. It's huge.
It's the size of a very small bathroom, probably.
Yeah, like it's like the size of the orb he pulls that drop from is several feet across. And it's like, holy crap, why are you just flying around with that?
Why wouldn't you just have just several drops in vials ready to go, not just a giant thing?
It's the equivalent, like with the ship he's in is tiny, and like this orb takes up like at least a good chunk of the interior of the ship. And like the modern equivalent is like me driving around in a white panel van with a suitcase-sized nuclear bomb in the back, just set on a random timer. I don't know when or if it's going to go off. I don't even know if it's turned on. I just have a nuclear bomb in the back of my vehicle, fully armed and active.
Yep.
Like, it's fully armed and active. It could go off at any time.
And all you need to do is use a stick of dynamite. You don't even need the nuclear bomb.
Right? Like, my needs are a stick of dynamite, and I have a nuclear device in the back of my van. That's the equivalent we're talking about here. It's insane.
And if that created a black hole, which created a vortex to another time, wouldn't it, be reasonable to say that the explosion from the supernova just went to another time period? At least some of it?
Yeah, I mean, it had to go.
So they're just destroying another timeline?
Yeah, because they already established that black holes are basically wormholes to different, like, temporal dimensions. So if you use a black hole to stop an explosion, you're just sending that explosion somewhere else, like to someone else's dimension. It's still somebody's problem to deal with.
Maybe that'll be the Quentin Tarantino version, where it gets sent into that dimension. J.J. Abrams just screwed up that whole dimension. Or and it's all dark.
Or it could be that, you've got Spock just flying around, chucking this stuff out. It could be every time in a movie you see a random explosion that has no explanation, that's what it is. Spock.
Split across the multiverse.
Yeah.
Why did that just blow up? I don't know. Damn it, Spock.
The problem is if you know even like a little bit about actual science, a lot of this movie starts like taking some hits really fast.
Well, the whole genre, they just make stuff up just to make it work. Like warp drive?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, like, okay, so part of what made the original Star Trek good is like they had actual science advisors. And while the stuff they have is maybe complete sci-fi now, there was at least some actual scientists who were like, we can't do this, but maybe 100, 200 years from now, we could do something similar to this or something like this. This movie just abandoned that.
Oh, yeah. And just throwing in the trans-warp theory and all that, which they've had in Star Trek before, but they just really just accelerated that, didn't they?
They went a little AWOL with this.
Yeah, and I think in this whole movie with all the characters, you were expecting all these characters. That's what they wanted. They wanted, the reveal of all these characters. And it was definitely forced. I personally think it might have been a better movie if they literally just did their own thing on it. You never know. It could have been good. It could have been bad. But if they just took the characters, played them extremely loose, and just made that event in the beginning change everything and not make them become who they're meant to be, they become different because of that, because it's a new timeline.
Yeah.
I think that might have been a little bit better.
They could have done a bit more to really set themselves apart. I don't know. Maybe it would have been nice to see like just some brand new characters and just a different thing entirely.
Yeah, it might have been cool. Yeah, just even a different ship, just for the heck of it. They just went on a completely different direction, like a new show would.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But, they wanted to play off the nostalgia, which they did. And it was still a fun movie, so it worked. It definitely worked. This is the end of the show, man. We're at the end. So let's talk some dice. What are you thinking on dice on this one?
Oh, this is a hard call. I'm torn. Personally, as much as I like this movie, I would have to, I feel like a D8. Yeah, a D8.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I've been going back and forth with a D8 or D10.
It's a good movie, but it has some very clear-cut areas where it could have improved.
Yeah, and that's one of those things because I really like how Christopher Pine was Kirk, and I actually like Zachary Quinto as Spock. I know a lot of people didn't, but I think he did a really good job as Spock. I liked him a lot, and then of course Simon Pegg, who doesn't love him? Yeah, it just could have been so much better with all the talent they had there.
Yeah, and then you had Carl Urban as Bones. That's always he's always a joy to
Carl
watch.
Urban's awesome.
And Simon Pegg.
You don't even have to say it with him.
Simon Pegg as Scotty, and Tov Yelvin as Chekhov. I love Chekhov. I'm sorry. He's such a I realize he doesn't have a huge part in the movie. He's kind of a secondary character, but
he was pretty important though in that movie. They wouldn't have survived without him. That was awesome.
Even the little bit of screen time they give Chekhov was very enjoyable. So yeah, it's a solid D8 for me.
I was kind of leaning towards D8 to D10, but I always kept going back to a D8. So definitely a D8 for me. It's very fun to watch. And I did watch it twice this time. The first time I was pulled back in because it had been years since I watched it. But then the second time, I was kind of my mind was wandering, that sort of thing. So the replayability on that movie is really not there. But if you wait long enough, then it's still fun to watch again.
Yeah. It's one that you can maybe pick up once a year, once every couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, Star Trek universe, we'll get back into this later, and we'll probably go back into one of the earlier movies, not the reboot. Probably one of the original Star Trek movies, or maybe even the Next Generation, because there's one that is definitely my favorite. But until then, let's just keep on rolling on these movies. All right, well, you guys keep it cool. We'll see you next time.
Ta-ta.
There it is.
We'll be right back.